The NFL Combine may be just kicking off in Indianapolis, but it sounds like Anthony Richardson's time as a Colt is done. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Nick Cattles on today's show. It is trade season in the NFL. We get the big news that Anthony Richardson is set to be dealt by the Colts. Not really a shocker there. We got our first big trade of the offseason between the Titans and the Jets, and there are a lot of other trades that may pop up here shortly as well. Before we dive into all of it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Nick, we got news on Thursday that probably isn't much of a shock to anybody, especially after everything that transpired in Indianapolis last year. But Anthony Richardson apparently is going to be working directly with the Colts. Well, not Anthony Richardson himself. I'm sure his agent and his representation, his team, you could say, is going to be working with the Colts to get a trade done. And again, not much of a shock to you, right?
No, not really. I mean, you look at Daniel Jones and what he did this past year before the Achilles injury. It is interesting, though, because it was an Achilles injury for Daniel Jones. So I guess the Colts feel very confident that Jones will be healthy. He'll be back. He'll be fine. Or maybe they feel great about Riley Leonard or whoever else they're going to go out and get to help support Daniel Jones. But as far as Richardson, it's really interesting, Tyler. Fascinating prospect, was very raw coming out, as we all knew, into the draft. And the question was, would he be able to refine those skills? And he really hasn't consistently done so. There are people, though, in the analytical world that will tell you that there are certain metrics and certain analytics to explain why Anthony Richardson maybe wasn't as good as some people thought he was going to be, and not all of it is on Richardson. So fascinated to see where he ends up and how that impacts his career.
No, 100%. He's a fascinating player, even with the struggles that he had in Indianapolis over the last couple of years. Remember the tapping his helmet, taking himself out of the game and things like, that's just wild stuff right there. And there's just a lot of noise in Indianapolis, so it makes sense it's time for a change. And for the inside scoop on what's going on, we go to my guy, Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts.
The Indianapolis Colts and quarterback Anthony Richardson Sr. have mutually agreed to seek out a trade for Richardson, sending the fourth-year quarterback out for, greener pastures, just a kind of a fresh start. If Anthony Richardson's representation is able to find anything out there, surely there will be some interest out there for a quarterback who's still just 23 at this point. It really has just not worked out for Richardson. The writing's been on the wall here for a bit. Loses the starting job to Daniel Jones last offseason. Injuries have told the story of this guy's career. He has missed games all 3 years due to injury. Obviously suffered a severe eye injury in this last one that ended his season. He's recently been cleared for football activity. So it seems like that eye is as good as it's been so far. But keep an eye out for us here on Locked On Colts. We'll have everything for you when it comes to Anthony Richardson and potential trades.
And it feels like this is something that is going to get done at some point. He's not going to be with the Colts. I agree with you. It's a bit of a risk. I think the Colts botched this situation completely. Like you said, he was an incredibly raw player, and they just did not have the patience. Now, moving on may be the right call, but they just didn't handle it properly. But where does he go next becomes the conversation. The Minnesota Vikings are going to be a team that's out there. They're like a halfway house for quarterbacks at this point. Any quarterback that failed, bring them to Minnesota, and and then they'll be good to go. But there's also that clip of Kevin O'Connell saying, I believe in you on the field after one of their games. The Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford's 38 years old. Could they maybe take a chance to rehabilitate him? The Steelers with 42-year-old Rodgers. The Falcons need a quarterback. The Dolphins need a quarterback. Of those teams, or maybe a team that I didn't mention, who do you think would be the best fit for Richardson going forward?
Well, I mean, you think that he played his college football at Florida, right? So maybe Miami makes some sense. They're a desperate organization. And really, Miami, I think, as we all look at how it's going to play out down there, it certainly seems like they're taking this slow, right? They're cutting a bunch of guys. They're looking to trade guys. This is a rebuild. So I think it's a good situation for Anthony Richardson to go to Miami. There's not going to be pressure for him to be great right out of the gates. There's not a lot of pressure to win football games, I don't think, in 2026 for Miami as they reset things. So that would be an interesting marriage. The Minnesota thing is compelling, but I do wonder, does Minnesota take the risk? You already have J.J. McCarthy, a guy who was a top pick for you, who has fallen short of expectations, to bring in another reclamation project and Anthony Richardson. I don't know if that's too much for Kevin O'Connell. I don't know if his head would implode. But, if you're Richardson and you see Justin Jefferson and you say, if I could beat out J.J. McCarthy in a competition, I got some pretty good talent around me. I got a good head coach and a smart play caller, a quarterback whisperer. I might want to try my hand at that shot.
No, that makes sense. I was thinking, there's the clip of Kevin O'Connell talking to Richardson, so everybody's immediately going to go to Minnesota, especially with what's happened. But I don't think Minnesota can afford for that to be their QB too. They need to get like a veteran that they can trust to actually step in and play if McCarthy just truly isn't worth it. I think you're onto something there with Miami. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I would rather trade a day 3 pick for Anthony Richardson and roll with him if I'm Miami than pay $30 million to Malik Willis for multiple years after probably releasing Tua and taking, they do it as a post-June 1st. You're going to eat 60 and then 30 next year. Like, you're right. They're tearing things down in Miami this year, not looking to be competitive, and letting Richardson have the year to kind of figure things out, get back healthy, see how he fits, work on mechanics without the pressure of, hey, we're trying to win games. We have Tua and Tyreek and Waddle. But I honestly think that you made the best point possible. I think Miami would be the best fit for Anthony Richardson, and he's going up against Quinn Ewers. And if you're Miami, you could also stealth tank in that way too. Like, hey, we're taking a chance on a high upside guy, letting him and Quinn Ewers battle it out, all while realizing if it doesn't work, we can still draft a quarterback really high next year after we have a bad year.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you don't have much to lose, right? If you bring in Richardson, you're not going to pay a lot. I can't imagine he's going to cost you a day 2 pick. I would agree with you,
right,
Tyler. It's probably a day 3 pick. You bring him in, you have a competition between he and Ewers, and best guy wins. And if you lose football games, who cares if you're Miami, frankly? Let those two guys battle it out and see if either one of them can actually prove that they're a legitimate starting quarterback at the NFL level at this point. I would say, when you look at the Malik Willis part of this for Miami, obviously Jeff Hafley has knowledge of Willis being in Green Bay, so it probably has a really good background vibe and feel for him. So he might have one of the best inside looks at Willis of any team that's looking to bring him in. And the other question I would have if I'm going to Miami is Bobby Slowick. It's not as if he looks great in year 2 in Houston, right? Everybody was talking about Slowick year 1, and man, oh man, look at this guy. He's the next tight pants guy, offensive play caller who's going to take over the league. And then he fell off a cliff. So maybe if you're Anthony Richardson, you look at it and go, I don't know if I trust Bobby Slowick or not.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think Richardson is going to have to balance, do I want an opportunity to play, or do I want to go somewhere like Los Angeles or Minnesota, or, if San Francisco trades Mac Jones, I think that Mac Jones might get an opportunity to maybe start for a team, or at least compete to start for a team like the Jets, Atlanta. Maybe he goes to Minnesota and is the guy who competes with J.J. McCarthy there. San Francisco's going to have a backup quarterback opening, and they've rehabilitated some guys as of late too. So maybe if you're Anthony Richardson, you do prefer a place where you can be in the shadows with a coach who is good, compared to going to get an opportunity that you may not be ready for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because, we're not talking about a guy who's only played for a year or two, right? I mean, he's got his fifth-year contract option coming up, and I think it's May. And, are you going to pick up that option, not pick up that option? If the option is not picked up, this is his last shot to prove to the world that he can play quarterback to then walk into free agency next year and get that payday. So there's a lot of pressure on Richardson, and it'll be very, very intriguing to see if he goes the patient route and says, well, I don't have to join a team right now that puts me out there right away. I'm still going to prove myself, or he goes to an opportunity where he wants to play. I would have to imagine it would be the latter after what he has experienced in Indy.
Yeah, I would think so. But with that being said, that's a potential trade that is going to happen down the line. We got a trade on Thursday, the Tennessee Titans and the New York Jets. We're going to dive into that, plus some trades that we think could be on the horizon in the NFL as well. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it can also send you to the NBA Finals. And if you know ball, coming out of the break, the best part of the NBA season is about to kick off. So make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you're going to get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Nick, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, it is trade season, and we had our first trade of the offseason on Thursday between the Tennessee Titans and the New York Jets, and it was the rare player-for-player trade. Usually we see player-for-pick, things like that, but got a player swap here between two teams with T'Vondre Sweat, the former second-round pick, interior defensive lineman, nose tackle from the Titans, going to the New York Jets in exchange for the former first-round pick, Jermaine Johnson, who came back from an Achilles tear, didn't have a great season last year, but now Johnson is back with Robert Saleh, who he worked with the New York Jets early on in his career. Saleh went back to San Francisco, tried to get him in San Francisco, now in Tennessee, gets him in Tennessee, and my guy John Butchko from Locked On Jets talks about this is kind of a win for both teams.
Trading Jermaine Johnson to the Titans for T'Vondre Sweat is probably going to be an unpopular move in large portions of the Jets fan base, but I think it's the right move. Johnson suffered an Achilles injury in 2024, and he did not look like the same player returning in 2025. I think there are serious questions about how productive he's going to be going forward and whether that Achilles injury could alter the course of his career. He was set to make $13.4 million in 2026. I think getting out of that salary alone makes this trade worth it. But the Jets also got a useful player in T'Vondre Sweat. He's a quality nose tackle. He's a two-down guy. He's limited. He's a run stuffer, but he's going to help the Jets' run defense quite a bit. I think that this is a good trade for the Jets, even if a lot of fans don't like it, because I know Jermaine was popular, but sometimes trading a popular player is the right move.
Obviously, I cover the Titans. I loved this trade for the Titans, even with the risk involved with Jermaine Johnson. From an outside perspective on both teams, even though you are in the AFC East with the Patriots, what's your thoughts on this player-for-player swap?
Well, look, regarding Tennessee, of course, you brought his name up a couple times with Robert Saleh. Every single time a move is made on the defensive side of the football for Tennessee, it's the vision of Robert Saleh. And he obviously looks at Jermaine Johnson and feels like he can play a pivotal role to this defensive front. I would also agree with John Butchko, though, when you look at Jermaine Johnson, and I saw the Patriots, they played the Jets twice, obviously, this year, being in division. I watched the film on the Jets a couple of times, getting ready for those games. And Jermaine Johnson was not the guy who popped. Will McDonald was the guy who popped on the edge. And if you look at what Johnson did, 34 pressures in 14 games, that was 61st in the NFL. When you go back to what Johnson did with Saleh in New York, In 2023, he had 53 pressures in 17 games. That Achilles, it's a big question. He's 27 years old. It's the last year of his contract. So this is a bet on Robert Saleh for, the Jets. I think this makes a lot of sense. T'Vondre Sweat is signed through 2027. The Jets pretty much feel like they're going to start a rebuild, right? With all the trades they made last year at the deadline. Reportedly, they're open to making more deals. So is Garrett Wilson the next guy out? We'll have to wait and see. It also feels like Aaron Glenn, from what I've been reading, probably going to shift to a 3-4. If you're shifting to a 3-4, having Sweat in the middle, that space eater makes a lot of sense. So I slightly lean towards the Jets because Sweat turns 25 in July, still young, and he's definitely more cost-controlled and healthier than Jermaine Johnson.
Certainly more cost-controlled. I'm with you there. I think some of the concerns with T'Vondre Sweat were off-field things in Tennessee. Yeah. Not a guy who at least I had been talking to a few people in Nashville. They were not happy with his offseason last year, how he took care of himself, how he came into, got in shape, stayed in shape. And those have been things that people have been concerned about T'Vondre Sweat with since college, quite honestly. Now he goes to New York City. He's a guy who, when he was at Texas, it was known pretty well. He liked to have a good time. He liked to party. So will New York be good for him? But I think from the perspective of the Jets need to beef up their front, be better against the run. They are a rebuilding team. He's a younger player. Like you said, cost-controlled. I think for the Titans, too, that they had a major need on the edge. Yeah. And Robert Saleh is a guy who likes to just line up 4 guys and rush after you. And when you do that, you need to make sure that you have depth at this position. So is Jermaine Johnson going to come back and be a elite level pass rusher and all that? Probably not. But for the Titans, who have $100 million in cap space, you want to pay $11 million for Jermaine Johnson this year and see what he gives you. And then if he leaves, maybe you get a compensatory pick for him. I think that makes sense too. So I think there is a way to view this for both teams as, hey, this makes sense for our team. But I think the potential of T'Vondre Sweat being younger and all of that does make sense, but there's some risk there as well. But that's just the first trade that we have seen in this NFL offseason. There's going to be more trades going forward, and someone who could potentially be on the trade block is Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Arizona Cardinals. And I think the Buffalo Bills would be a great fit, and my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills thinks the same.
Let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Cardinals. So why should the Bills consider this? Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. is crazy talented. I thought he was the best prospect in that draft 3 years ago. You get a chance to maybe buy low there? Geez. I'd be excited about the potential of that return for a guy that turns 24 in August.
I am not out on Marvin Harrison Jr. yet. I think he's a good player. I don't know that you can trust anything that happened in Arizona last year with Drew Petzing at offensive coordinator. If you were the Bills, would you trade a second-round pick to get Marvin Harrison Jr. in after burning a pick on Keon Coleman just a few years ago?
Given what you have, I would. To make Josh Allen happy, I would. Look, I have no idea. I liked MHJ coming out of the draft like everybody did, okay? Everybody thought he was a spectacular talent, a great prospect, but I really don't know what to make of him. He's been up and down throughout his Cardinals career through the first couple of seasons. I still think he's super talented. Is there something missing? I don't know. I don't know him personally. Again, Arizona, not the greatest situation. Kyler Murray also up and down. Jacoby Brissett up and down. So was he hurt by the quarterback? Was he hurt, as you mentioned, by the offense and the offensive coordinator? Good luck to Detroit fans now. So when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., I would bet on the talent. The fact that he's still only going to be 24 in August, I would bet on that talent. I would bet putting him with Josh Allen, and that would really just turn him up a notch and have him look like the guy who we thought he was going to be when he was drafted. The only other thing that you got to be concerned about, if it is a concern, is that he played 12 games last year, and it was a number of injuries. Now, the appendix, hey, that happens. What are you going to do? Can't change your appendix, okay? But he had a concussion, and he also had a heel/foot issue. So he only played 12 games last year. But yes, if I'm Buffalo and I have a chance to take that swing, your second round pick is lower in the second round. It's not like you're giving up, a top tier second round pick towards the top of the round. I would take that swing. The question is it enough for Arizona? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm Arizona and I just hired Mike LaFleur, I am not going to give up on Marvin Harrison Jr. just yet. I'm just not willing to do it just yet. I want to see what he looks like in Mike LaFleur's offense. That would be what I would want to do. But outside of Buffalo necessarily, just generally speaking, would you rather take a chance on a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., who's still young, still has a lot of upside? Or would you maybe be more interested in a guy like Garrett Wilson, who has had his ups and downs as well, but has had some bad quarterback play? He's more expensive at this point than a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's also probably shown a little more consistently in the NFL. I think Garrett Wilson is a guy who could potentially be on the move as well.
You know, it's a very interesting question, tough question. I would probably lean towards Garrett Wilson. Like you said,
right.
the contract is settled. It's going to cost you more money to carry him, moving forward. But when you look at what he's done and when you look at his situation, I mean, the Jets have been a disaster at quarterback. Right. When they had decent quarterback play, this guy played like a legitimate number one. So, I think that if you're going to make a move, I would lean more towards the proven. But it's really difficult again because Marvin Harrison Jr. is still young, and man, oh man, looking at him play his final year or two in college and what he was able to do and how awesome he was. I don't think you can lose with either guy, but I would lean towards Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I don't think either decision would be a bad decision, but I'm with you. I think Wilson has just proven more, and if I'm going to go out and trade quite a bit of draft capital to do something, I'd probably want to go with the guy who I feel more comfortable with over potential, because you know what they say, potential is just another word for hasn't done it yet. You know what I mean? But DJ Moore is another guy who could potentially get traded. It's kind of interesting. We're hearing a ton of different trade options. Javon Dexter, Tremaine Edmonds is now officially allowed to seek a trade. DJ Moore out there. I would probably put DJ Moore third on that list out of these wide receivers that we're discussing. He didn't really take accountability for the route issue at the end of the Bears season last year. The Bears don't really need him. He's set to make like $28 million this year. Would you take a chance on trading for DJ Moore? And what do you think about the Bears trying to trade away all this talent after finally having a good season? I'm a little skeptical of that.
Well, I think it's the change in regime, right? I'm sure Ben Johnson didn't want to have so much turnover in year one. So I'm sure that he wanted to evaluate the guys on his own, see what they can do, if he's comfortable. These guys fit the system, especially on the offensive side with Moore. I would say Moore, no doubt, is third on that list. Now, I'm lukewarm on him. I probably would be willing to give a pick, but I'm talking about, maybe a 5th round pick, 6th round pick. He's 29 in April. You mentioned the contract stuff. $28.5 million is the cap hit. He's guaranteed $23+ million in March. That is a contract restructuring waiting to happen. So what does the contract look like? And he's coming off his worst season, 50 catches, 682. Previous lows were 55 and 788. That was his rookie year in 2018. So he's getting closer to 30, as a lot of guys are, right? We don't get younger, but going to be 29 in April with the contract stuff and the season he had. Yeah, I mean, I would take a flyer, but I would not be giving up anything of significance.
No, I agree. And whereas I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has the potential to be a game-changing wide receiver, and we've seen Wilson do that, I don't know that if DJ Moore is going to be that for the next couple of years. So it makes sense to have a little hesitancy there if you're a team in the trade market. But with that being said, we're talking about these different kind of trades that could happen, but there are two big-time players in the NFL who have been in trade discussions or rumors, whatever, for quite some time, in A.J. Brown and Maxx Crosby, and we got some updates on those guys this week at the Combine. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like the Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There truly is something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. For me, the number one pick got to be something that I can count on, and I can always count on the 5 Hour Energy grape flavor. It's a Concord grape flavor that's similar to like grape juice or that grape candy that you've had. It's got a nice soft and rounded sweetness. It's smooth, almost syrup-like fruit profile, consistent, straightforward. It's got that classic purple candy style finish. But If I had to go with a sleeper, I'm going to go with the peach mango. It's got that ripe peach flavor on your first sip. Then the mango adds that tropical depth and sweetness. It's slightly richer of a mouthfeel than the citrus flavors, sweet, aromatic finish, and it's got a nice, balanced tropical blend. But regardless, make sure that you make your selection for your number one flavor of 5-Hour Energy, and you can find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available online right now at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. All right, Nick, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, it's trade season in the NFL. We got the Anthony Richardson news, what could be his next home. We got an actual trade between the Titans and the Jets. Some wide receivers could be on the move as well. But the two biggest names on the trade block right now are A.J. Brown and Maxx Crosby. And we got an update on A.J. Brown's status from Howie Roseman at the NFL Combine. And my guy Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles is like, who knows what's going on with this, because it goes back and forth every week.
So Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni met with the local media today at the NFL Scouting Combine. I'll be there for their press conference in a few hours, but not going to really say anything at this point that we now don't already know. They said a lot this morning and a lot about A.J. Brown. It sounded very non-committal. Basically, my interpretation of what both said is the Philadelphia Eagles have a price for A.J. Brown. They are not just looking to unload him. They think he is a great player. Nick Sirianni said he is a good teammate and a good person. Sirianni said today he wants him in Philadelphia, that he thinks A.J. Brown wants to be in Philadelphia. But both of them were very non-committal and said they would listen to anything when it comes to all trade proposals. So again, my interpretation is they're not just going to get rid of him for a third, fourth round pick, right? Just to get this guy, this locker room cancer off the team. But if a team does meet the price, I think it's going to happen. I was leaning last week more in the direction that AJ stays. Now I'm leaning in the direction that he's traded. It's different every single week, but Howie Roseman talked today about AJ the same way he talked about Carson Wentz at one point right before he was traded, right before Hassan Reddick was traded, and we've seen Howie in this kind of situation before. So
I'm going to keep saying it. The Eagles would be nuts to trade A.J. Brown. It just it makes their team so much worse, and they are in a championship window where their roster is good enough to actually win Super Bowls. They can't really do this. I just refuse to believe that they're actually going to trade him.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about relationships, when is enough? And
true,
for the Eagles, they might look at this and say, it felt like last year was enough. And, of course, you're not going to give him away because of his talent level, but I absolutely agree with Louis and what he had to say. Reading what Nick Sirianni had to say and then Howie Roseman and their comments at the Combine, it just felt like they said enough to show support, but they fell short of being committed. And so I think it's a very fine balance that you have to strike. And I think both guys did that. If you want A.J. Brown, you say, he's going to be on the team. He's part of our roster. We're not looking to move him. He is critical to the operation. He's on our team. That's it. We're going to stop everything right here. And that's not what they said. They kept it open-ended. And I think, the Eagles are trying to get as much as they can, like they should. But I don't think it's because they love him and he's a great player. I think this is all about the finances. And I think they're not going to give up A.J. Brown for a fifth-round pick and take that $40 million cap hit.
No way.
Before June 1st, right? So you've got to come up and offer something that makes it worthwhile so they can swallow that $40 million hit. And don't forget this, it's a pretty deep draft at wide receiver. And if you can get a second-round pick, maybe a late first-round pick for A.J. Brown, then you feel better about taking that cap hit because you say we replaced them at the position with somebody who's younger and not making nearly as much money. I think this is a total money play, and we'll see if they pulled the trigger on it. I think the most fascinating part, Tyler, about these conversations is, does any team, leverage? Do they leverage Philly and say, hey, look, the picks, this draft class. If we give you a pick next year, you don't know where you're picking. So say yes or no to the deal right now. This is what's on the table. It's intriguing to watch play out.
if they truly do want to replace AJ with someone in the draft, yeah, you can kind of hold him over the barrel there. Like, you don't know that next year's draft is going to be as good. You don't know if you're going to be able to get guys in your draft slot, where you're going to be picking. That's a great point there. All I would say is this, a cautionary tale. As someone with experience, trading away A.J. Brown and thinking that you're going to replace him with somebody in the NFL draft can be a dangerous game. Now, the other big name player that I think is more likely to get traded is Maxx Crosby. And we got, I guess, somewhat of an update on Maxx Crosby from the Combine. And my guy, Q Myers, talked about how John Spytek, the general manager of the Raiders, kind of talked out of both sides of his mouth.
Yeah, it's not solidified that Maxx will be with the Raiders in 2026. It's also not solidified that he won't be with the Raiders in 2026. I think this is still a Maxx Crosby and Raiders decision. I think at some stage of the game, they're all going to sit down and decide if the timelines, as we talked about quite a bit here on the show, match up. And if they do, all is good. If not, well, then they have to make other decisions. And also, I know that there's plenty of teams that have reached out to the Raiders to ask about Maxx Crosby.
I mean, I just don't think that it makes any sense for the Raiders where they're at to keep this guy around. Jay Glazer has reported how angry he is, how upset he is. I just think it makes sense for both sides. The Raiders need to rebuild. By the time that Maxx Crosby, or by the time that they're a good football team, Maxx Crosby's going to be in his early 30s at that point. If I'm the Raiders, this is a move that I would make. I would trade Maxx Crosby.
Yeah, I don't know why he would stay. Breaking news, the timeline does not match up. I think we can, be fairly confident in that. It makes too much sense for a contender to acquire him. He's 29, his play, his mentality, I think he will fit in any locker room. He's a great culture fit wherever he goes. And let's be honest here. Maxx Crosby, he holds all the cards. There's no doubt that teams are interested. There's no doubt that teams are calling. If Maxx walks into a room and says, I want out, he's out. And there's not going to be any debate. So I think eventually he is gone, and I think it could happen sooner rather than later.
I think it needs to happen sooner rather than later, especially like a similar thing to like you were saying with the Eagles. If you're the Raiders, you want those draft picks now so that you can get what you got. You got some good picks. You add to that. Not only do you get extra picks, but it gives you the ability to move around the board. If you like one of these pass rushers that's fallen into the 20s, you can move up from your early pick in the second round. Like, it's just about having that ammo right now to keep the fan base energized. So I'm with you there. I think this one needs to get done, and I think it will get done before the NFL draft. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Nick Cattles. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.